welcome to another episode of Sensible Reactions. Hey, I'm ShAyee, and we back with another one. Okay, what I have is my personal knowledge and opinion, baby. The only law is the universal laws. I'm just here to bring the knowledge to you. You know what I'm saying? Just to start you off, baby. You got to do the work. Okay, you got to do the work. All right, so you can learn more about yourself for yourself. I will be reacting to some more videos as time goes along here. And we're going to be taking this information that we are learning now and taking it over to somewhere else. And we're going to add some more information. Okay, because this information I'm giving now is just a baseline. It's just basic information to know. That's really it. Okay, so that's what we doing. Now, to catch me live, hit the link in the description below if you're on YouTube. Okay, hit the link in the description, hit the follow button, and turn on the notifications so that way you'll know when I'm live, so we can talk real time. And if you are here on Twitch, then make sure you go to my YouTube. As you can see, it's on the screen. My socials are on the screen. Yeah, so tap in. All right, because on YouTube, of course, there's videos that are not on Twitch and vice versa. So, okay, let's go ahead and get into it. We are going to be going over intelligence, right? A lot of stuff in science, this being one, is not the consciousness, all of that. They're still trying to figure out to this day. And this information is from a while ago. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
Smarty pants, egghead, brainiac. You've heard terms like these before. Maybe you've even been on the receiving end of one of them. But actually, defining intelligence is a lot trickier than just coming up with new names for smart people. I mean, intelligence isn't like height or weight. You can't just toss someone on a scale and get an exact measurement. It has different meanings for different cultures and ages and skill sets. So what is intelligence? That's a question that doesn't give us a lot of answers, but it does open up a bunch of other equally important and interesting questions. Like, what influences it? And how can it be assessed? Is it a single general ability, or does it cover a range of aptitudes and skills?
You know, this is the part I do miss in school, like having a thing and then just asking questions and just building out from there and really coming up with information based on that. Because, like, we really do have a lot of information and a lot of knowledge stored within ourselves that we don't realize they exist. So bringing it out is just amazing. I'm just sitting here thinking that's the one thing I missed in school. That really just took me back to school when I would go in science, because that was my favorite class, right? Math was also one of my favorite subjects. The only problem is I never had a math teacher that was able to control their class. And I didn't have that great of an attention span to pay attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, some days I would get it together, come to the front, sit down, and try to focus. But man, when I say it was so much going on behind me in the classroom, it's ridiculous. All right. And then sometimes I was a part of it, playing cards, chilling, just, you know, it was the block. All right. It was the screen.
Talents. How do things like creativity and innovation factor in, or genetics, environment, or education? And what about emotional intelligence? Most agree that it's best to think of intelligence not as a concrete thing so much as a concept. The ability to learn from experience, to solve problems, and use knowledge to adapt to new experiences. We've often used intelligence tests to assess and compare mental aptitude, but these tests had a long, complex, and dark history. I mean, there are Nazis involved, so yeah. So as you'll see, there are reasons that intelligence is one of the most hotly debated subjects in psychology. It's complicated and controversial.
Yeah, they're just like consciousness. It's also, you know what I'm saying? Look at my guy, out of all people.
Solver, but a terrible speller, or a truly gifted artist who barely mastered long division. Could anyone say I was intelligent or not based on those different aptitudes, or would it be more accurate to measure my brain power on several different scales? Around the turn of the 20th century, British psychologist Charles Spearman suggested that yes, you do have one.
Bro, look at my boy Fit. I can't lie though, he kind of look hard. Not G-Unit. Girl, I'm so done. He got the chains on. Charles.
and comprehensive general intelligence that underlies all of our specific mental abilities.
Charles,
He called
my
it
boy.
the G factor.
I
Spearman
know
conceded
it
that while
is.
people may have special talents like basket weaving or saxophone solos or doing crossword puzzles, those things still fell under G. And he helped develop a statistical procedure called factor
my
analysis to try to
goodness.
determine how certain clusters of skills might correlate with
G
another one.
pimpin'.
Like, say, someone who tests well in spatial skills might be good with numbers. We might then refer to that cluster of skills, that factor, as spatial numeric reasoning. But to Spearman, the G factor was something of an uber factor, connected to all intelligent behavior from architecture to healing to survival skills, and it's why people who do well on one kind of cognitive test tend to do well on others. But as you can imagine, reducing intelligence to a single numerical test score was and is problematic. L.L. Thurstone, an American pioneer of psychometrics and one of Spearman's first challengers, was not into ranking people on a single scale. Thurstone administered 56 different tests to his subjects, then used them to identify 7 clusters of mental abilities. By this system, you might turn out to be great at, like, verbal comprehension, but less stellar at something like numerical ability. Sounds fair. But when researchers followed up on his findings, they actually did see that high scores in one aptitude usually meant good scores in the others, essentially backing up some evidence for some kind of G factor. Even though their ideas did not often align, Spearman and Thurstone together paved the way for more contemporary theories on intelligence. For example, American psychologist Howard Gardner views intelligence as multiple abilities that come in different forms. He references instances of brain damage where one ability may be destroyed while others stay perfectly intact. Savants usually have some limited mental abilities, but one exceptional ability when it comes to, like, computing figures or memorizing the complete works of Shakespeare. To Gardner, this suggests that we have multiple intelligences beyond the G factor. In fact, he believes that we have 8 intelligences, ranging from our skills with numbers and words to our ability to understand physical space and the natural world. American psychologist
I could believe that we got some, honey, because I've literally probably have tried to learn in every aspect of my intelligence based on Gardner's list. Just learning from all those standpoints, from a numerical standpoint, from the music side, from, like, really keeping yourself stimulated, and really, that's really all I can say about that. Keeping yourself stimulated, like keeping your mind healthy. One thing that I appreciate that my grandma always taught me is to make sure you keep your mind healthy. You feel what I'm saying? Meaning, like, keep your mind stimulated. You always want to be learning. You don't want to get stuck. You don't want to get stagnant. You know what I'm saying? You want to always make sure your wheels are turning. You know what I'm saying? Don't go dumb, okay? At least not intentionally. So, that's one thing I for sure appreciate, but it has played out in a lot of different ways for me personally. Because, girl, I have literally, like, I just like to explore at this point. You know what I'm saying? For sure at this point, but yeah.
Psychologist Robert Sternberg tends to agree with Gardner, though he boils them down into 3 intelligences: analytical or problem-solving intelligence, creative intelligence, or the ability to adapt to new situations, and practical intelligence for everyday tasks. Both of these models seem reasonable too, and Gardner and Sternberg's work has helped teachers appreciate
I like intelligence, sapiosexual, okay? I was trying to say apart from one of my songs, but I'm not going to say that.
students' variety of talents. But research has suggested that even these different ways to be smart are also linked by some underlying general intelligence factor. So what about other less tangible forms of intelligence, like creativity, our ability to produce ideas that are both novel and valuable? How could a test that demands one correct answer account for more creative solutions, so-called divergent thinking? Well, traditional intelligence tests can't, and so far, while we do have some tests that look at creative potential, we don't have a standardized system for quantifying creativity. But Sternberg and his colleagues have identified 5 main components of creativity, which are useful for framing our understanding of what creative intelligence is and how it works. And when you go through the list, you know who I think is really great at almost all of them? Sherlock Holmes. Hear me out. First, we got expertise, or a well-developed base of knowledge. This just means knowing a lot about
Sherlock
a lot,
Holmes.
whether it's arcane poisons, jellyfish behavior, or how to recognize a secret passage behind a bookshelf. Expertise provides the mind with all sorts of data to work with and combine in new ways. Obviously, Sherlock has incredible imaginative thinking skills too, which provide him with the ability to see things in new ways, recognize patterns, and make connections. He loves nothing more than rehashing these breadcrumb trails for the dopey constables at the end of a case. Sternberg also thought a venturesome personality contributes to creativity. By hanging around opium dens and chasing thugs and generally courting danger, Sherlock routinely seeks new experiences, tolerates risk, and perseveres in overcoming obstacles. And everyone knows he's driven by intrinsic motivation. I mean, he wants to help the widow discover the thief and everything, but really Sherlock is driven by his own interest and sense of challenge. He gets pleasure from the work itself. And finally, Sherlock benefits from a creative environment which sparks, supports, and refines.
I don't think I ever seen Sherlock Holmes. I don't think I ever have. Inquisitive, huh?
His ideas. For so affectionately maintaining this environment on Sherlock's behalf, we largely have Dr. Watson to thank. Sherlock was obviously an academic and creative genius, but he was pretty weak in another form of intelligence, the emotional kind. Emotional intelligence, defined in 1997 by psychologists Peter Salovey and John Mayer, no, not...
That's kind of how I go, right? We're strong in certain areas and we come here lacking in other areas. And that's partially something that I was watching last night in regards to that. How we come here with certain like vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies.
Not that one, is the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and use emotions. I don't know about you, but I know plenty of smart people who have a hard time processing social information. The most brilliant mathematician may struggle to communicate with colleagues and neighbors or staff at the local deli. Likewise, Sherlock often annoys, offends, or even baffles those around him. Perceiving emotions means being able to recognize them in faces and even music and film and stories. Understanding emotions relates to being able to predict them and how they might change. And managing emotions comes down to knowing how to appropriately express yourself in various situations. And finally, emotional intelligence also means using emotions to enable adaptive or creative thinking, like knowing how to manage conflict or comfort a grieving friend or work well with others. Much like creative intelligence, emotional intelligence can be measured to some degree through testing, but there's no standardized way to assign a numerical value. So if we can't perfectly quantify things like creativity or emotional smarts, how did we come up with a way to measure intelligence? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a sordid story. The first attempt to do it in the Western world began with English scientist Francis Galton in the 1800s. Taking a page from his famous cousin Charles Darwin's theories on natural selection, Galton wondered how that premise might extend to humans.
Oh, that's another person. Girl, you hear these names you hadn't heard in so long. I hadn't heard his name in a good while.
Natural ability when it came to intelligence. He suggested that our smarts have a lot to do with heredity, so if we encourage smart people to breed with each other, we could essentially create a master race of geniuses. If that sounds a little sketchy, it's because it was, really, really sketchy. This study of how to selectively and supposedly improve a human population, especially by encouraging breeding...
But where would it leave other people, quote unquote?
To some people and discouraging it in others is called eugenics, a term Galton himself coined, and I'll get back to in a minute. But around the turn of the 20th century, when eugenics was taking off, the French government mandated that all children must attend school. Many of these kids had never been in a classroom, and teachers wanted to figure out how they could identify kids who needed extra help. Enter Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon, two French psychologists who were commissioned to develop a test to measure a child's so-called mental age. The concept of a kid's mental age is essentially the level of performance associated with a certain chronological...
Okay, yeah, they still definitely do that to this day. The reading levels.
Age. So if 6-year-old Bruno tests as well as the average 6-year-old, he'd have a mental age of 6. Binet believed that his tests could measure a child's current mental abilities, but that intelligence wasn't a fixed inborn thing. He believed a person's capabilities could be raised with proper attention, self-discipline, and practice. In other words, he was no eugenicist. He was hoping that his tests would improve children's education by identifying those who needed extra attention. But Binet also feared that these tests would, in the wrong hands, be used to do just the opposite, labeling children as lost causes, limiting their opportunities. And wow, was he onto something, because that is pretty much exactly what happened. German psychologist William Stern used
when you put weird people in the situation,
at the time,
it can only happen in a weird way.
Divided by your chronological age, multiplied by 100. So, for example, Bruno is 6, and so is his mental age, so his IQ ranks at 100. But his little sister Betty is a 4-year-old with a mental age of 5, so her IQ would be 125. That formula works pretty well for measuring kids, but it falls apart when it comes to adults who don't hit measurable developmental steps like kids do. I mean, there's no real difference between a mental age of 34 and 35. But Stanford professor Louis Terman started promoting the widespread use of intelligence testing in the early 1900s, and with his help, the U.S. government began the world's first mass administration of intelligence tests when it assessed World War I Army recruits and immigrants fresh off the boat. Unlike Binet, Terman did use these numerical findings as a kind of label, and he thought his tests could, as he put it, ultimately result in curtailing the reproduction of feeble-mindedness. This kind of testing played right into eugenicists' sensibilities, and soon the eugenics movement in the U.S. had a pretty good fan club, raising money from the Carnegies and Rockefellers and with...
Yep. As soon as I heard, as soon as I just heard that you was able to do this to people coming off the boat and all of that shit, that let me know it had reached the level. Okay, that's the level where he has agreed to work with them. Okay, he has agreed to work with the government. Okay, and then you see who bought into it. If you know anything about anything, at least from the bare minimum, it makes sense.
Proponents working at Harvard and Columbia and Cornell. In the first half of the 20th century, intelligence...
Because all they want to do is be able to use the tests for their own doing, okay? As a matter of fact, Buddy right now love talking about the tests, right? Taking the test, the cognitive test, the test. That's what they want. To be able to have these tests. To be able to say who's sane and who's not sane, okay? Yeah, a lot of know the game now is drugs. They drug people right now. They're currently drugging people, and people, just, you know what I'm saying? Okay.
Tests were used to enforce the sterilization of around 60,000 people, around a third of whom were in California. Most were poor white women, often unwed mothers.
Sterilized.
Or prostitutes. Other eugenics efforts persisted further into the century, and there's evidence of poor African American, Native American, or Latina women being forcibly...
See what I'm saying? Follow your brain cells. Follow the past. Follow the now. Where is this taking you? All you gotta do is listen to the clues. It'll tell you exactly. Once you start paying attention, you learn the things that they like and gravitate to. You know what I'm saying? Anything that can be used for mass control, they pretty much with it. You know what I'm saying? There's always mass control. You feel what I'm saying? It's never mass help. Okay? Just like these inventors, mass help. But see, they want to be able to use it for control. Because why?
Or covertly sterilized in large numbers as recently as the 1970s. But you know who really loved their eugenics? The Nazis. Hitler and his cronies took the idea of intelligence testing to even darker conclusions. The Nazis were all about selecting against so-called feeble-mindedness and other undesirable traits as they sought to strengthen what they saw as their Aryan nation. They sterilized or simply executed hundreds of thousands of victims based on their answers to IQ test questions that were really more about adhering to social norms than measuring actual intelligence. Questions like, who was Bismarck and what does Christmas signify? So you can see how this terrifying history still makes some people leery of how such tests are administered, interpreted, and weighted. Today, we understand that intelligence, as defined by all the people we've talked about here, does appear to be a real and measurable phenomenon. But no one can say that they've disentangled all of the would-be genetic, environmental, educational, and socioeconomic components of it. In the end, it's best to think of intelligence as something about which we still got a lot to learn. And next week, we'll talk about how we test intelligence today and the problems we still face in doing it. Today, your intelligent mind learning.
Well. I'm not at all surprised, baby. It's really sad. It really is how they do. It really don't make no sense because what? All right, whatever. Not whatever to the thing, but whatever in this moment. Okay, y'all have a good one. This has been nice and short. I gotta get up out of here, so I will be only dropping 2 sensible reaction videos this week. Okay, all right, we'll be back strong next week, and we'll be at, excuse me, we will be at number, this can't be right, I guess it is, we'll be at number 24 out of the 41. So yeah, but y'all have a good one. I appreciate everybody that showed me love. I appreciate everybody that drop in, all of the things. Okay, I'm grateful. Okay, all right, I need to figure out where is my center line, because it's given this is not me looking at the camera, but maybe I am. I'm gonna see, and we're gonna check it out, because I'm looking at the camera, but then when I look like I'm looking at the camera, so I don't know. We're gonna see. All right, y'all have a good one.